Welcome back to another Good News, Bad News Libertarian Christian Roundtable, the best Libertarian Christian Roundtable on the internet.
And the only.
And the only.
Woo!
Right. So we're going to start
Which
off.
by default
we're also
is the best.
Worst. And the worst.
and the worst. Yeah.
And the mediocrest.
And the mediocre.
Yeah.
So we're going to actually start on something negative today because we need to talk about how the world has a negativity bias, and this is just a terrible thing. And if there's anything that a libertarian Christian should promote, it's the truth about the state of the world. And so I'm going to let Carrie lead on this because this is so important to talk about. I will preach this all day long. And so will Carrie.
Okay.
So I'm going to let Carrie preach it.
Take it away, Carrie.
Very good. So yeah, well, Doug's got a picture of this book. It's called 10 Global Trends Every Smart Person Should Know. It's written by it's co-authored by, I forget the first person's name,
Ron
but
Bailey and Marian Tupy.
Thank you. And I came across this book listening to an episode of the Jordan Peterson podcast, and I thought, ooh, we need to talk about this because basically this book is about 10 things that are super positive about the world, even in spite of all the negative crap that we get bombarded with every day. And so as I was listening to Marian Tupy talk about this, he was explaining that we have this negativity bias. In other words, we have a tendency to focus on all the, the negative, even though it, maybe accounts for 10%. Like he used the example of, you might go in to talk to your employer about your job performance, and it might be 90% praise and 10% criticism. But when you walk out of there, you're going to be focused on all of the criticism, and all of the praise is going to go away. And so, he uses that as an analogy to say, hey, you know what? There's lots of smart people in the world who are influencing. They're trying to make change. They want the world to be a better place. I think libertarians fall into that category, but we do have a tendency, myself included, so I'm preaching to myself here, we do have a tendency to focus way too much on the negative. And the other thing that he pointed out was that not only are we bombarded with negative media, constantly, and because that's what sells. But he even said that our availability heuristic is affected by our own personal memories. So we have a tendency to ruminate and contemplate more on our negative memories than our positive ones. And so I think it's very helpful in helping us learn how to frame what it is that we're looking at. Because when you focus on the negative, it drags us all down. And so at any rate, I wanted to talk about this book because there's positive things to talk about. He talks about everything.
Would you say you're more of a pessimist or an optimist, Carrie?
Generally, I'm more optimistic. But, I can get sort of sucked into, I can get sucked into the negative stuff pretty easily.
I would tend to favor or be on the optimist side. And in fact, even over the last year, which I think it's been very easy to fall into a pessimistic trap. There's been a lot of positive things to really consider. Yeah. And we are, I really think that that a lot of the root of this kind of the pessimist trap, it comes from the being overexposed to media, frankly. Yeah. And that it's really easy because if it bleeds, it leads for media to kind of dominate. Media that dominates is that which, bleeds.
Isn't that a reflection of what the market will handle and what they want to see? I mean, if we wanted to see good stories, wouldn't we consume what would be the opposite of if it bleeds, it leads? If it glows, it
blows.
I don't know. What about you, Doug? Are you an optimist or a pessimist?
I am I am both. No, I am at heart an optimist. However,
At heart, but in
yes.
practice.
Yeah, in practice, I'm the person who, like, there was no such thing as the 90% praise in my job interview. There was only the 10%. Like, I am that kind of person.
Yeah.
I mean, I recognize that, and so I have to, walk myself through it. But when it comes to things like with over the past year with the pandemic, I was very much able to celebrate what humans were doing to get around, not necessarily get around the rules or do anything, but like be together in ways that were safe within the confines of like what they were able to do in their community. Whether it's my girls actually continued doing choir during the pandemic. They were...
You mean super spreader event?
No. That's the thing, is that the way in which it was done was not that. And so we were just like, oh my goodness, the people who are leading this group were our amazing creative people who came up with a way to do a large choir that is what anybody would call COVID friendly, safe, whatever, right? So it was pretty remarkable. It was a little like, oh, okay, yeah, they were getting creative, and sometimes that comes with a little bit of like, that wasn't quite as good as what we saw the year before, but it was really, the kids had fun and all of that. So there was a lot of inspirational ways in which people were doing things, and I don't mean even, again, there are ways that people rebelled that were inspirational in many ways, rebelled against the state, that is. But there were still a lot of inspirational stories, and obviously the development of a vaccine and the way in which resources were mobilized. There were a lot of things that went wrong, of course, and there are a lot of things to be sad about. I'm pessimistic about the state in terms of like government, because I believe that people are sort of, as we are leading out of a less religious, mystical world, we have to worship something, and that something is going to be the biggest elephant in the room. And that's gonna be the state or the donkey in the
authority
room, whatever.
bias there.
And I want to point out really quickly, Marion Tupy and, gosh, I'm so sorry. I keep Ron Bailey. Thank you. They're not being like irrationally optimistic here. And in fact, they talked about this in the episode on Jordan Peterson's podcast. Is they're very rational about it. They're very sober minded about the potential negative things that are coming down the pike. But, they're saying, let's not dwell on the negative stuff because there's a lot of positive things that are worth fighting for, are worth saving, things that, they could be destroyed if we kept on going down the wrong path. But we have good reasons to be hopeful. We have good reasons to be optimistic. This isn't a, there's a term called toxic positivity where it's like ignoring the writing on the wall. Like we don't want to do that either. But at any rate, I thought that the premise of the book was really cool.
Can I give you a quick test?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to give you something bad that's happened in my life recently. I would like you to give me the optimistic outlook.
All right? Oh, no.
All right, here we go.
All right.
I recently, just this past Thursday, had a molar removed out of my the top of my head, and it's really
the top of your head?
That was very painful. Not the top here, but the top half of my mouth.
Yeah.
Head.
Oh, okay.
The back one?
I was going to say that getting rid of one out of the top of your head, that's a really good thing.
That's a really good one. Yeah, that's a
really good thing.
But it's
painful,
and I still I'm still dealing with the pain of it. So what do I do with that, Carrie?
Oh, well, the comment that I want to make isn't optimist. It's empathetic because
we'll do that.
The same thing has happened to me. So I don't.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, thank you to Douglas Wilson. We now know empathy is a sin. So.
Oh.
Well, haha. I am totally committing a sin, Doug Wilson.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
I'm also the only Rothbardian woman he's ever heard of, but whatever.
Sin boldly, if that's the case. So I will give you 100 years ago, you would still be in different kind of pain or dead. Like seriously, the medical advancements.
That's true.
Oh, and getting rid of these problematic teeth in the long run leads to greater comfort down the line. So you're accepting a short-term pessimistic outlook for a long-term optimistic gain. You know,
Wonderful.
we call that having a low time preference, which is really great. Which is really great, especially considering the economy right now, which is looking more and more high time preference these days. And that actually kind of leads right into our next segment pretty darn well. So Matthew, tell us more about this. Where's the government getting the alcohol from these days?
Well, you have to remember, don't worry, guys, because as it pertains to monetary policy and what we're doing over at the Fed, don't worry, everything is just fine. Okay. Oh, sorry. I forgot. No, it's actually bad. It's bad.
Bad? Real bad. Oh,
yeah. Our good old friend Mike Mahari wrote a wonderful article that I think you all should read at some point, but telling us about Janet Yellen's flip-flop and really what that means to the market. I don't know if you guys paid attention to the markets today, but a lot of tech stocks dropped because of the possibility of inflation. And as we all know, inflation bad. So if you're coming at the markets from a standpoint of wanting to make money, inflation, not your friend. But Janet Yellen kind of said, inflation, don't see it happening. Everything's great. And then later on that day, she's like, something could probably happen. Maybe. It might be bad. And then later that day, she said, but if something happens, we'll be totally fine. We're totally cool.
We'll be fine.
Everything's
fine.
Everything's cool. So she walked back. Treasury Secretary walked back her comments later in the day. She told Wall Street Journal CEO Counsel that even that she doesn't anticipate an inflation problem, and she parroted Federal Reserve Chairman that any price increases will be transitory. So thank God things are transitory.
What does that mean, transitory?
Temporary.
Nobody knows. So don't worry.
Honestly,
it's one of those words that they pulled out to try and say it's just transitory. How? What does that mean?
It's just one stop on the pathway towards even higher prices. Transitory.
It's transitory. So don't worry about it. We're okay.
We're at a transition point.
We're at a transition point to the central banking digital currency.
This is this is the equivalent of we'll figure something out.
I really don't understand how they would propose. Like, what would the central bank do by what do they stand to gain by rocking like their own sort of digital currency like that that's not already in existence? And by that I mean like they're already just numbers on a ledger, right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah.
Their own ledger. So okay, you want to add a zero? Okay, cool, whatever.
Wouldn't it have something to do with trying to restore confidence in the currency that they're providing? Because I mean,
they're doing a really bad job of it if that's the case, though. Because
but to be fair, they do a bad job of it anyways.
Well, there's a lot of high time preference people who are spending their stimulus money, so they're reinstilling this myth that it's just money. Oh yeah, ooh.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, let's. The other part of that data, though, is that a record amount of money has been going into the stock market, which in effect is putting a monetary premium on stocks themselves, which is why we've seen potentially seen such an increase in or maintenance of the stock market rise.
Well,
what happens?
Go ahead.
Well, what happens though when it becomes evident that just by you can't just keep perpetually pumping up stocks and
right.
without increasing actual productivity.
Yeah.
So, the stock market price, Ludwig von Mises once said that a functioning stock market is basically the first sign of a real economy, or a free economy. And that's true, but it's not the only one. And it could potentially be a deceptive one.
Yeah.
So it is interesting to kind of consider that even though we do have a relatively functioning stock market, there are still some significant problems.
Well, couldn't we say that this is sort of the last functioning thing of our market right now?
Well, it's a little difficult to say that because I mean the problem with monetary policy is you've got two cooks in the kitchen when it comes to the Fed and the federal government. because the federal government has such a part to play in inflation and in other aspects of it, that it's really hard to start gauging that market confidence, because you're going to, as you flood a market or a particular area with so much currency, then that starts to affect all of the other aspects of a market. And then you can't do proper, allocation of resources, because all of that money is just floating out there, inflating prices, and you don't know what's actually truth. And that's the whole thing about price.
Yeah.
Price is supposed to reflect truth. And whenever you've got this issue, it doesn't.
All right. So all I hear is go invest in decentralized cryptocurrency.
Like that.
I mean, to an extent, putting some type of well, first of all, we should say this is not financial advice. We are not financial advisors. However, it would be appropriate to kind of hypothesize that having some sort of exposure to hard money in some level is wise, when you're looking at the potential
gold, silver, and the like.
I mean, the business cycle is a process of overinvestment and malinvestment, leading to a bubble, leading to a pop.
Mm-hmm.
And I would suggest that there are many signs that we are looking at the overinvestment stage.
Yeah.
So is this a dollar bubble? Is that what it is?
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Is it really? I mean,
well, and you're probably going to see more of it because of all of the spending that the government has gone into. I mean, the federal government has just gone crazy nuts.
Right.
Yeah.
Overspending it. We're not seeing a whole lot of.
You say that like it's a recent thing, Matt.
Why can't? When are we going to see
the rate has gone up?
When are we going to see a bubble with the military-industrial complex?
They're a protected class.
I mean, that's a good question. What tends to happen in these bubble periods is that as investments are made that end up being revealed unprofitable because they were overly risky, those tend to get liquidated, and that's what causes the crash. And so you could see how that played out in, say, the dot-com bubble, because there was so much overinvestment and malinvestment into vehicles that were not ultimately profitable. They were overly risky. When they were revealed to be unprofitable, what did? They completely dropped in price. So that's people liquidating down to what would be an appropriate market level for the actual investment that it was. Likewise, with the 2008 crash at that point, same thing with this in the real estate market. So it would seem to me that there are probably a couple of ways in which this could theoretically play out. One is that the stock market is going to come, there's going to be a reckoning somewhere around there. And that doesn't mean you just necessarily get out per se. Mm-hmm. Because trying to time the fall of a drop knife is like ridiculously difficult. And so, there is a wise investment policy for oneself would be to not just get out, but rather look for the opportunity to double down. Because eventually, these things do. The long-term outlook, I would say, for the economy is still positive, because people need to work and live and produce, and that's what we do. I mean, we always come back. You look at all the data. I mean, what happened after 2008?
Right. Well, and
take off.
And we rely on all of this stuff too. Yeah. Like it's not just that we have to work and eat.
The faster that we can get to the wind down, the better that we can actually get back to rebuilding and, for lack of better words, let's wind up again.
Yeah.
It reminds me of what I heard from Tom Woods, and I think he heard it from somebody else, but the issue of the master builder. If the master builder had so many bricks to build a home and a gazebo, and then halfway through found out that he didn't have enough bricks to build the gazebo, how soon does he want to actually know that? As soon as possible, so get to the bad part so he can reallocate resources as quickly as possible.
It's kind of like a retelling in a sense of one of Jesus's parables, wasn't it?
I mean,
if you go off and build a tower,
and you don't allocate. Yes, exactly. Hey, I just want to end this segment with a quote that I heard from one of FDR's advisors, who was his Treasury Secretary, as it pertains to spending and inflation. It's pretty fantastic. We have tried spending money. We are spending more than we ever have spent before, and it does not work. And I have just one interest. And if I am wrong, somebody else, I can have my, well, let me get down to here. We have never made good on our promises. Say
Right.
after 8 years of this administration, we have just as much unemployment as when we started and an enormous debt to boot. I mean, talk
Wow.
about a politician being absolutely transparent as to what the actual truth in monetary
Yeah,
policy and
that's
inflation
not
and
good.
spending is. I can't find a better one. Doug?
Speaking beyond the grave.
Yeah, well, hey, the bubble is going to pop, which leads
Henry
us
Morgenthau. Remember the name.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, so if the bubble is going to pop, that leads us to our next topic, which is pop culture.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
you got there.
That was
Yeah,
good.
I'm proud of
something.
you.
Yeah, he sounded so excited when he said it. Pop
So
culture.
I have so we want to talk a little bit about, we can like briefly share what we've each been consuming lately in pop culture, and I'll go first and then I'll let Norma go. And I have been consuming something about a year late, which is the show This Is Us. It's a show that's been on, I think it's in its 5th season, and it got kind of delayed because of COVID, and then also it was picked back up again during COVID, and I think I didn't watch it during because we were watching other things, and I didn't get back into season 5, so we just started watching it again, and it's really weird a year after because the season starts with them experiencing COVID just happening. And so the show, they're newly masking, they're giving air hugs 7 feet away or 10 feet away.
Oh my gosh.
They're in like it's a very strange experience watching this, like, year ago kind of thing. No, they were like doing
Do that.
this.
You have to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, doing
elbow.
that. Oh.
And it was
Oh, yeah.
really weird
Who's that
because
guy?
they were
Elbow
like
bumps?
taking it seriously. Elbow bumps, that kind of thing. It was just so it's been very interesting to watch the experience of these people on a show like experiencing COVID, and of course they represent the show in a way that, like, this character is this type of personality regarding what's going on in the news, and this person doesn't take it seriously yet, and this person is the Nazi about masks all the time, and there's always like you can pick all the characters. So that's what I've been consuming, that, and because I finished watching Big Bang Theory, I started watching Young Sheldon, and that's been really fun too, so.
Wait, now, so This Is do you actually like This Is Us?
I do, yeah.
I have never seen it, primarily because I find the title of the show utterly pretentious.
Really?
Like, this is
That
collectivist.
does sound like Matthew, though. I mean,
Well,
Yeah, I think without diving into it
But-
on this episode, I'll explain after offline, as it were. And yeah, so Norman has a really interesting thing he's been.
so talk about picking things up years late. I started watching a show that I saw come out a few years ago, and then I didn't pay much attention to it because I thought it just sounded like a dumb title. But it actually is pretty good. And
is it
it's
This
called,
Is Us?
No, it's called
Oh.
it's called Money Heist.
Oh.
Money Heist.
Yes, it's an interesting show. It's filmed in Spain, and let's say, I guess, spoiler alert already, because I'll reveal some things in there. But it's filmed in Spain, and it's all in Spanish. And I highly recommend that you actually watch it with Spanish, the original Spanish with subtitles rather than with the overdub. I started watching with the Spanish, found out, oh, look, they have an overdub. And then I tried a little bit with the overdub and was like, oh, this is terrible. Oh, this is horrible. I want their voices back. And
Right.
so, and at any rate, so I do recommend listening to it in the Spanish. And plus you might learn some Spanish while you're at it.
That's always good.
Yeah. Anyway, but the plot is really about a group of thieves. And if I don't know what it is about me and heist movies. Like, you would think that, those of us who are libertarians and against aggression and whatnot, like, we can't really get behind heist in general, right? I
I
mean,
thought you were against thievery.
right. But I've always liked like Ocean's 11 and some of those movies and whatnot. And so I thought, hey, look, these guys are wearing Salvador Dali masks. This is really interesting. Like, what are these guys
That's
doing?
fun.
So,
But
yeah,
do you like it because it's kind of like a sticking it to the man type of?
well, and that's the thing, is that the plot is about them taking over the mint of Madrid, where they print euros. And what they are literally doing is that they've taken over the mint, they've taken hostages, but what they're not actually stealing from a vault, they are printing new euros. And their goal is to make it out of there, I think, with something like 2.4 billion euros. Yeah. And they're supposed to do this over the course of like 12 days. And of course, everything goes wrong. And there's so many different things that happen over the course of it. And again, spoiler alert and also content alert. This is not a kid's show, so on. Yeah. Just be aware of that when you get into it. But it's really interesting as it evolves. Obviously the author's intent is for you to side with your protagonist is the group of thieves, as well as some of the hostages as well, and so on. But what's interesting is the way in which they elicit that sympathy for them. And in part, it's kind of revealed that they are, in a sense, sticking it to the man. They make it a deliberate effort. Their goal from the outset is they do not want to actually hurt anybody. That's their internal plan. They're trying to get out of this with no bloodshed whatsoever. Of course, that doesn't work out, but that's a whole nother story, right? Spoiler alert, But another interesting thing is the way in which they justify their actions by saying, we're not actually stealing from anybody. We're just printing more money. So there is literally a monologue about this very thing. And to where the main character, if you will, lectures to it ends up being one of the detectives, that when the World Bank or the I don't know, whoever the monetary authority of Europe is, whatever they call it, the Central Bank of Europe decides that they're going to print 180 billion euros and give it away to the banks, that's considered stimulus. When they do it again the next year, it's still considered stimulus. And when they do it again the next year, it's still stimulus. But then if they decide, we're going to print 2.4 billion and we're going to, walk away with it, now we're the bad guys. And it's just kind of interesting because it does kind of pose this interesting little moral dilemma in a sense. And of course, crypto solves this, and that's a whole nother funny thing. It's interesting that when they originally are producing this, is I think it's like 2014, 2015, and there actually is an interest, like a bit about Bitcoin in it as well. Nice. About how they're able to get weapons on the black market for just a few Bitcoin. It's hilarious. It didn't actually give me any numbers that I could make a conversion with, but I thought it was kind of funny this to consider. Like, okay, if this is 2015, the price was this. Oh man, if they just waited a little while longer, they could have walked away with a lot more.
Right.
If you work at the White House and you're in charge of entertainment, let me offer up a show to you. It's called Money Heist. Yeah. Please watch it. And then introduce your goose to the gander, please. Yes, Thank you.
All right,
so I thought that was kind of neat. And just anyway, it's an enjoyable show. It's kind of like, the Spanish telenovela, meets a heist movie. And so,
nice.
Whatever.
Matthew, What have you been watching?
Lord of the Rings.
Good man. That's good stuff.
Carrie.
So yeah, I've been binge watching Deep Space Nine, but I did finally.
A woman after my own heart.
Yes,
That's
I love
great.
Star Trek. At any rate, I'm actually finally on the final series of that. I got to meet the new Dax, not meet literally, but anyways. But I did finally watch.
Esri.
Yeah. I did finally watch Zack Snyder's Justice League, which we were commenting about. I don't know how to analyze it compared to, because it's re-release for those who don't know. I don't know how to compare it to the other Justice League because I can't really remember.
That's okay. It was utterly forgettable.
Who directed it? Who directed the last Justice League?
Wasn't it?
Joss Whedon did. He was the guy that. So Zack Snyder had a family emergency, like he had a family member
major
die.
Family death, or something like that.
It's a death in the family caused him to have to exit the film, and then Joss Whedon was recruited to, because he did such a great job with the Avengers, he should do a great job here. Not so much.
What happened?
It was really
Joss
bad.
Whedon?
Isn't Joss Whedon the one who did oh, now I'm forgetting it.
He did Firefly. He
Thank
did Buffy
you.
the Vampire
Firefly.
Slayer. He
Firefly.
did
That's what I was thinking of.
Dollhouse.
He had all of these great
Angel.
things that he did early on,
Yeah, but
and then
then
he
he-
got all political and then started to crap it
went-
out.
Well, yeah, more or
was
less.
Politics ruins everything.
It does.
It was
does.
unfortunate because I mean, Firefly is considered great stuff, of course.
Yeah.
Who doesn't
Even
like
for-
lasers in space and cowboys and fantastic.
Yeah, it's pretty great. It's pretty great.
All right. Well, that's what we've been consuming, and we of course
Let us
are
know what
gonna-
you've been watching.
Yeah,
We're looking for new
And
things.
water.
So you can visit us at libertarianchristians.com. You can also listen to the Libertarian Christian podcast, which, by the way, I interviewed Ron Bailey and Marion Tupy in 2 separate interviews, so you can listen to them talk about how the
There you
world is getting better.
Lucky.
Not perfect, but better. Yes, it was a great conversation. And so, yeah, well, that's all the time we have, and we will see you next time.